Welcome back to the OnTheLine Podcast. I'm your host, Zaire Collier. Today we have a special guest, as this is episode 19 when you guys see this. Joined by one of my friends, Dr.Dorcas.
Yes.
I do a lot of introductions for people, but I feel like that puts my guests in a bubble. I want to hear from you. If you introduce yourself to the people.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Dorcas. I've been working here at UC Davis for almost 4 years now. I'm a sport and counseling psychologist, and a former student athlete myself. I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where I competed in track and field. And then from then on, I was just in school for forever, getting this PhD.
So for you, touching on being a student athlete and then transitioning to now where you're dealing with the mental of several different athletes from several different backgrounds, what attributes did you carry over?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's necessary to have been an athlete and then work with athletes or work with performers, but it does help. Yeah. It's a great place of like resonance where I can say I've done the same things that you're doing right now, and I've experienced what you've experienced. Often with folks that are coming in for individual therapy, I'll always say, I like this to create a space where you can know that whatever you say within this space will remain within this space. Because when I was a student athlete, everybody was in my business. Right. I think that's true. And so coming from that experience, being able to bring what it was like to be a student athlete into the therapeutic space really helps build a relationship between me and the clients that I work with.
So you did touch on when you were a student athlete, everyone's being in your business.
Yeah.
And now in the world where we have NIL, there's social media at every turn, and it seems that mental health, I feel like the support and the importance of it has in a sense taken a background, but it's become more mainstream in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
So for you, what are some things you have seen common either in student athletes working or even just from the time from when you were an athlete into now, even though there's a kind of a generational change in the social media aspect?
Yeah, the mental health landscape has changed tremendously over time. And I think with the NCAA making it mandatory that in order to be a Division I university, you have to have an individual who's providing mental health services to your athletes. It's made, it sort of opened the door and really welcomed and decreased some of the stigma that came along with mental health. It's been helpful in getting people willing to engage in counseling, to engage in support, because we all need support.
Yep.
And I would say that stigma still is there. So even after an individual comes to sit down, there might be some dismantling of if I talk about the challenges that I'm going through, does that mean I'm weak? Is a common theme that comes up in therapy. So I think that the changes over time has been helpful in getting people to sit down and meet with a provider. And I still think that there's work to be done in order to allow for more depth in the work that you're doing on an individual or even group basis.
Why do you feel that there is a certain stigma around mental health? Because a lot of athletes, not a lot, all athletes go through it.
Yeah, true.
But those who speak up about it, not everyone's going to actually seek the support that they need. Where do you think that stigma or the glaring issue stems from?
I think it's so many different things. Being an athlete, what we know is to grind. We know to push. We know to achieve. And sometimes it can be framed that dealing with a mental health challenge is weakness, or that it'll negatively impact your game in some way. But I think with the change over time, with the willingness to sit down and to have more discussions about what's going on just in general, I think that it's allowed for more mental health discussion. I meet with folks all the time who still talk about how their parents don't believe in mental health. And so I think that this younger generation is more open in a lot of ways to addressing it. and we have to deal with these external barriers.
Right.
So that external barrier might be, oh, my parent doesn't want me to be seeing a therapist or doesn't believe in me taking medication, so I'm not going to do it because of that. Or it could be my coach is on me and I don't want to give them any impression that I'm not going to be successful. Right. So I'm afraid to go to a therapist because what if they find out? I think that there's maybe more willingness within this younger generation. And, I think the external barriers might create an added challenge in accessing care.
Yeah, because now you're giving spotlight to kids that are 16, 15 that are still, just as a human perspective, growing and developing, hormones, like mentally the whole thing. Yeah. Now, I have a question for you, because there's a difference. You're not just, therapy and counseling, but you're also breaking down the why and the mental aspect. How challenging or important is that for you? Because now you're not just breaking down, oh, I'm coming to seek help, but why am I thinking this way? How important is that? How important is that to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say it's everything. Like the why is everything. I'll have a lot of folks come in wanting to talk about, hey, I'm not able to, perform in a way that feels like it's up to my standard. Right. I'm not able to achieve in ways that I know I'm capable of. And a lot of what we talk about might be what it is like at practice, what it is like being able to be coachable and listen to my coach and be able to perform at game time. But then I think beyond that comes all the context that surrounds the athletic performance. So there's, what is my relationship like with my coaches? What is my relationship like with my team? What is my relationship like on campus? What is my relationship like in the community with my family? And it goes beyond and on and on and on and on. And all of these pieces, you can think of like a Venn diagram with a billion bubbles. They all touch. They all impact our in the moment performance. And so what we want to do is figure out, okay, what's happening in the moment, and then how many of these bubbles is it touching? And let's dig into each one of them, figure out what's going on, figuring out how we can intervene at whatever junction. If it's a family issue, how do we need to change how we relate to our family, or how do we need to change how we relate to ourselves? Right. It could be team dynamic. Oh, the team is really struggling to perform in this particular way under this level of scrutiny or under this level of spotlight. So maybe it's a team sort of situation that we need to work on. But the why has to do with, we can't do anything without the why.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, I have a question, because last season dealt with some confidence things while I was playing. I had a question for you as far as when athletes trying to seek that peak performance and dealing with performance anxiety, is that more confidence or composure?
I mean, it could be a mix of all of it. It could be none of it. It could be both. It could be, it sounds like here, let me start again. I mean, I think that of the two, if we were to choose one or the other, I would prefer a person coming in being open and honest. Often that composure can present as a barrier. Like, I'm composed, I look like I have my stuff together, right? But in reality, there's all sorts of internal turmoil that I'm dealing with. So I would rather someone come in being willing to express what's going on internal to them, throw out the composure, and let's get down to the heart of the issue, so that we can figure out, is it the confidence that's getting in the way? Do we need to beef that up in some way? Is it something else? Yeah, I guess I'll end that.
I love that. Because, like, for me, I've always dealt with, like, coming to a game, at least my first year, I was playing at 19 starting, so I'm coming to the games, like, okay, I got to remember this, and that, but I got to be composed. I can't show that. So.
But why? Why not?
Just the way I've been wired that season, because beforehand I was confident. Before the game, I'm dancing. You would actually think I'm not locked in. But that's the most locked in I am.
Yeah.
So that's where I've kind of seen that kind of weird translation where on the outside I may be looked at as, oh, he's dialed, but internally I'm struggling. Versus when I'm confident, oh, he's not locked in, but I'll go out there, won't miss a single call.
Right.
So that was like, it's huge to hear that from you, because like that's one thing I've personally have dealt with. I do. Go ahead.
I mean, I love that. I think that there's so many different types of athletes, and that so much of like media today has sort of pigeonholed athletes that you have to be Kobe. You have to be dialed in, not smiling, not, Mamba mentality at all times. And I just don't think that one very specific presentation could possibly be enough for all of the athletes that exist. I was a similar athlete. I was all over the place. People didn't think that I cared about my sport. I cared about my sport, but I knew that as soon as I was locked in and only focusing on the jump or the hurdle or whatever the next event was, that would stress me out. And I wouldn't be able to perform to my capabilities. For me, I needed to be silly. I needed to be talking to my friends. I needed to be on the sidelines, making jokes. That was what allowed me to perform at my best, was being able to detach from the performance until I needed to lock in.
Right.
I think the being locked in throughout wore on me. It was exhausting. And only so many people can sustain that over a long period of time. And for me, it was beneficial to be silly.
Yeah. I love that. Now, I know every athlete is case to case, but what are some common signs, I guess, that you can see when you know an athlete may be dealing with something mentally? Not necessarily just a performance, just but like on the mental health and the mental well-being. What are some common signs you may have seen?
Yeah, and yes, every athlete is different. It's hard to really pinpoint just like a couple things. But if I were to say anything, it would be to have a good enough relationship with the individual that you can tell when their behavior shifts, when something is off. And when you notice that, to be willing to dig a little deeper. Don't just, maybe they're having a bad day, I'm not going to bother them today.
Right.
I would encourage you to draw closer, move toward them, ask really meaningful questions, sit them down, tell them that you're worried about them. Meet that vulnerability with more vulnerability, and from that we can get an understanding of what's happening.
Yeah.
I think that what's hard is when maybe you notice that something is off, but we are too afraid to dig deeper, and an individual might read that as, okay, well, no one really cares about me. But to express that care, to express the love, the value that you have for the individual if you're worried about them.
I think to add on to that, as far as the athlete's perspective who may need that help, to be comfortable being unique in your issues. Because I feel a lot of athletes, what way social media has portrayed mental health, if I'm having a bad day, I'm in this category. Versus, hey, I'm having a bad day for this reason. This reason may be why someone's maybe having a great day. So having that uniqueness to add to that vulnerability, I think is huge.
Yeah.
To add to that, because I recently going to the Black Student Athlete Summit, seeing a bunch of different perspectives had kind of changed. Like, I've been fortunate to have certain opportunities, but the things that get me down are a blessing to other people. So I can't categorize my pain or my emotions based off of a larger scale. So that's
it's tough, because I think that people will do that. They'll say, oh, I mean, I'm so lucky to be worried about this issue on the team, or me not being able to have this many minutes of playing time. If I get any playing time at all, I should be grateful. But it's like, I get frustrated working with that in therapy, because I know that their perspective is valuable, regardless of what they're working with, regardless of what is contributing to that level of concern. I want to know what that is. I want to be let into that process. If we're masking to the point where we're maybe not expressing our truth, then we can't uplift. We can't address the issue.
Right.
And you know, your perspective is your reality. No one person's pain takes away from another person's pain,
Mm-hmm.
and no one person's experience can take away from another person's experience. I mean, the goal is to learn it all.
Yeah.
To figure out how we can best support.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I do want to pivot a little bit back to the performance anxiety. Now, what would you say to athletes that are competing out of a fear of failure versus their ambition to succeed? Is one better than the other, or how does that mental, barrier kind of weigh on each side of that? Because it's a different ball game when I'm trying to compete. I'm trying not to lose my job versus, hey, I'm just trying to beat the person across from me. It's a different mentality. So how would you?
Again, I think it's just, this is going to be so dissatisfying because it just depends. Some people are really good at running away from the hard thing, and that they've built up the skills to be able to run away from the hard thing. Some people are really good at like, no, I just want to achieve. I want to do this for myself. I'm coming from an internal motivation and I'm going to kill it. And it really depends. I would say that I'm not concerned unless you're concerned. I'm not concerned unless it's interfering with your functioning. I'm not concerned unless you're not able to achieve the things that you're wanting to achieve.
Right.
But I think, like, ideally, we don't want to have to live in fear. So maybe if I were to choose one, it would be to come from that internal place of motivation to achieve. And I don't judge if it's working for you and you're fighting to avoid that punishment, fighting to avoid the suicides that you have to do on the line, whatever it is. If it's motivation, it's motivation.
Now, for an athlete, if they wanted to increase their performance in learning, the why, the mental, what would be some tips you would give? Either 3 or 5 things you would kind of like. I know, again, case to case, but what were some pillars you would say, hey, these can help anyone?
I mean, I think I would say a couple things. There are principles of just well-being, having to do with flexibility, having to do with building up a distress tolerance, having to do with having access to community. These are things that we just know produce beneficial outcomes. With that flexibility, you're not so rigidly or narrowly focused on achievement along one path. Maybe we are aware of all of the paths, of several options that we can take, so that if this one path doesn't work out, we can just hop over to the next one and it's okay. With accessing community, we want to be connected to those that are surrounding us, whether it's our teammates, whether it's our friends, whether it's our family, but someone that you can lean on, that you have a vulnerable relationship with, that when things get hard, you're willing to go to them. So resilience. With resilience, I think that the benefit is that you recognize that when you've had a hardship, you don't have a fixed mindset about it, that this hardship means that I am weak or I am a failure, but rather that perhaps that hardship, you see it as a growth opportunity.
Right. That
I can work through this hard thing and come out even better on the other side. That belief in the self that allows you to persist through challenges. Is really the goal.
Now, not last question, but one of our last questions we always do with On the Line is, for you as an individual, what makes you happy?
Family. I have 3 kids. I come from a big family. I was one of 6. But just knowing that my family's got me, that I got them, and that whenever we get together, it's going to be a good time, really keeps me going.
I love that. Now, for student athletes here at Davis that may need support and don't know how to find yourself or the support they need, can you tell them where they could find you or that support needed?
Sports Psych at ucdavis.edu. Just email the sports psych email, and you'll get in contact with us. We'll get you connected.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I learned a lot. Yeah, that was a real conversation. I learned a lot. Thank y'all for watching. Dr. Dorcas, episode 19.
Yeah.
We out. Thank you.